Hey, what's up? Welcome to another episode of a Frugal Athlete podcast. Today we got a dear friend of mine, Taj Dashaun. Taj is a man of many talents. He's an author, speaker, podcast host, transition coach, and just all around positive energy. If you meet 10 people that know Taj, you're going to get 10 people that have solid words to say about him. So we've had the fortune and pleasure of connecting over the past 2-3 years. Some of the OGs in this personal finance, athlete, career transition space. But thought it would be good to have Taj on this podcast, share a little bit about his journey, some of the things that he's got going on, and most importantly, or let me not say most importantly, but how he's helping me, level up in some ways as well. So Taj, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm honored, Amobi. I appreciate that intro. Appreciate the kind words, man. You definitely made my whole day with that one, man. Like talking about if you talk to 10 people, they all have good things to say. I'm like, wow, man, that's humbling, bro. I appreciate that.
No, most definitely. Still upset we haven't linked up. So Taj moved to Austin, but that's just how busy he is. That's how busy I am. But we're gonna find time to connect in the near future. But yeah, everyone has good things to say about you, and this relationship has been very fruitful. Since we ever met. So let's get right into it. Tell them about Taj. How did you get to where you are today?
Oh man, that's a long story, man. So I'll give you the condensed version. But as you mentioned, so I played football at Stony Brook, and Stony Brook's not exactly a big D1 program, and I didn't have the best career there. So I knew I wasn't going to the league, but still I had a difficult time transitioning just because I kind of thought everything was going to take care of itself when I was done playing. Obviously not the case. I hadn't done any preparation to transition, and so I struggled a lot when I came home. And then eventually I did find a job in sales, but I was really only doing it for money. I was making great money, but I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. From there, I made a pivot into recruiting because I'm like, okay, I still want to be competitive, meaning competing with myself to put up placement numbers. But through recruiting, I could be competitive with myself and still make great commission, but also I was helping people put food on the table for their family. So from there, man, I kind of stayed with that thread of like, okay, anytime I help people, I seem to find more success and I seem to find more enjoyment in what I'm doing. But I knew ultimately staying the corporate route was not going to work for me. So I was like, I started really just looking around at what can I do to where I can essentially be my own boss and go into business for myself. And to make a long story short, man, while I was in that recruiting role, I had started doing some coaching for former teammates, guys that played with that Stony Brook, guys I grew up with. And it was just casual. I'd talk to them on the weekends. I'd talk to them after work, whatever the case may be. And then I'm like, wait a minute, there's an actual need here because it's not just football players. They started being like, hey, can you talk to this person? Can you talk to my cousin? She's a basketball player. She's struggling. So I'm like, let me do some research and see what's available for former athletes. And this was like 2017 when I started getting serious about this. And as well as I do, Amobi, back then, outside of like, Daniel Berman would tackle what's next. Around 2017, there wasn't much going on. So I'm like, well, let me get serious about this and put together some curriculum. And so that's how ThriveAfterSports was born. I quit my job, like an idiot and went broke. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. I had to move back in with my folks for a little bit. And I just stayed consistent over the past 3-4 years, man. And it's turned into a lot of great things that I never even saw up front. I just wanted to help people. So it's been great, man. It's been a great ride.
No, I love that first and foremost because, a lot of athletes struggle. Like, we've grown up our whole lives, fortunately and unfortunately being catered to. But that shift for you happened when you were focused on impact before income and serving before selling. And I think a lot of athletes can, take that story that you shared and apply it to their own situation. If we were to go back in time, what are some ways, you talked about being frustrated that, a job didn't come for you in the lane that you wanted after your collegiate career? What are some ways that you would have alleviated that or, done it differently?
Yeah, man, I always tell people, I think just being young and naive, I made the mistake of thinking that something was just going to fall in my lap, or just because I happened to be Taj the football star for so many years that opportunities were just going to come to me without having to go and get them, or more importantly, create them. So I always tell people like, your life path or you trying to figure out your next chapter in life at any stage in life, it's not just something that you're going to discover. It's not just going to hit you in the shower one day or like clouds are going to part and just this idea is going to fall on you out the blue. I always say like clarity has to be cultivated. And so if I could go back in time, I would definitely be more intentional about cultivating what I want instead of being so, focused on, I got to get money. I got to find a job. I got to move out of the house. I just would have spent a lot more time being clear, because I probably would have arrived at this point a lot sooner if I was actually visualizing the type of life that I wanted. Just as an example, when I did get a job I was working in corporate for 4 years, but I knew, like, during my first corporate job, that me driving to an office and sitting in traffic every day and sitting in a cubicle, that just wasn't going to work for me. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, for me personally, I knew that wasn't going to work, but because I didn't cultivate the clarity, I wasn't able to start wiggling my way out of that and create a lane for myself until 4 years of that, because I didn't start cultivating clarity till 4 years after college.
No, I love that. I love that. So with what you do with Thrive After Sports, what are some of the common, things that you see athletes struggling with? Is it like an identity, not cultivating what they want from their lives? How does Thrive After Sports help them? Like, I know you don't want to give the secret sauce away, but what is that journey or that curriculum process for them?
Yeah, man, it's all of the above, everything you just named, and then a host of other issues which we could get into. But my whole goal is to not only help an athlete create clarity. Well, first I start with helping them get through the transition piece, right?
Yeah.
Because I never want to be the guy who comes to a former athlete and says, okay, Amobi, now that you're done playing, what do you want to do? What type of job do you want? Do you want to, like, that's skipping a very important step. And so what I like to do is start with, number one, reminding athletes, like, hey, you're still a role model, first and foremost. Like, people are looking at you to see what you're going to do next. Also reminding them to celebrate what they've accomplished thus far, like being a part of a very small percentage of athletes who get to play at an elite level. So just kind of grounding them, reminding them where they're at, to be proud of where they are, where they've been, and also to be excited about the next chapter. Like, I always tell athletes, you're done playing, you got another 70, 80 years of life ahead of you to live, to be able to create whatever you want to do. So if you approach it like that, it becomes like, not all my life is over at, 25, 22, 23, 24, 25 years old, whatever their age is. Not my life is over, but my life is really just beginning. And that's a mental shift that allows the space for us to start creating what they actually want to do next. And so once we get into game planning mode, what I do is I'm very big picture focused. So it's not just like, hey, where can you go that's going to give you a paycheck? Yeah. It's about, what are you trying to create long term, even if you have to take a job in the meantime that's going to help you get there. And then once they have the vision locked in, part of what I do is I'm looking at, it's not just me who's going to help you get there. It's like, okay, if you want to do this, I'm going to teach you how to connect with the other people in that space. I'm going to open up my network to you to help you connect with those people. Yeah. So now it's not just Taj helping you get where you want to go. You got mentors in your pocket that you're connected with, and they can help bring you up to the next level. So that's pretty much the overview of what I do, man, just from the transition coaching side.
No, that's a game changer. And we're definitely going to have all that information in the show notes for any athlete that's listening to this. Obviously, a big topic of discussion is NIL. So for the people that aren't familiar, name, image, and likeness, how do you think, with everything that you do and everything that's going on in this current climate today, student athletes can take advantage of, something like this?
Yeah, man, just to be completely transparent with you, I stay in my lane. So I'm not an expert in NIL. I'm someone who's very focused on helping athletes figure out what they want to do after they're done playing. And I know a lot of that. I leave that to the experts like, you and Danielle Berman and Malcolm Lemons and folks like that who focus on the current athlete and how they can capitalize where they're at. I'm the guy who, maybe some of the people who slip through the cracks and don't have everything mapped out afterwards. But I will say, through some of the conversations that I've had with current athletes, I just remind them, number one, to not get too caught up in, I guess you could say, trying to make moves just for money, in a sense, and compromising who they are or where they're looking to go long term. Because I think sometimes some of the conversations I've had with athletes who are focused on NIL, they can get too caught up in, number one, being so focused on that they're losing focus on their current career. Not that you can't do both. Like, I see, you do a great job of balancing your professional career and also your brand and your business. But for a young college athlete, classes, traveling for games and also trying to build a brand, it can get complicated if you don't have the right guidance. So I guess to sum it up, I would say seek guidance, reach out to people who know what they're talking about and who are former athletes who have your best interests at heart. That's the advice I give to athletes. But like I said, man, I stay in my lane for sure when it comes to NIL.
I think the summary of it is, like, you have to keep the main thing, because if you're not performing at a high level, if you're not eligible from an academic standpoint, then that building the brand thing is almost useless, at least if you're a student athlete at that level. So
Exactly.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I love the fact that you were open and honest and humble enough to say, I stay in my lane. I think a lot of people, will try to touch everything. And if you touch everything, you end up touching nothing. So focusing on where you're good at, and then from there, as you build that solid foundation, then you can start opening up different lanes in what you want to do.
Bars. That's all I have to say about that, bro.
No,
Bars. That
no.
was gems right there.
So let's switch gears for a second, because you talked about your transition from a student athlete to doing the corporate thing, and then from corporate to entrepreneurship. So me curious, like you know what it's like, kind of like having nothing, and then the second time around you chose like, all right, I'm quitting. What was that process like, and would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely. I would do it again, man. I do it every time. And I have to be careful about this because I'm so biased when I'm working with athletes. If I know they're in a position that's not serving them, it has nothing to do with where they want to go. I'll encourage them to take a step down if they have to. I'm not going to be like, hey, I'm not going to say quit your job. And if that's what you need to do, then do that. But I think that I always say you have to do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. And that's what I felt was necessary at that time. So to answer your question about would I do it again, absolutely. Because once I locked onto this idea, and that's what I want for anybody I work with, and just, I think it's important for people to have something that they're relentlessly pursuing the same way that they did with their sport. So if you have that idea, that's where it comes back to the idea of doing what you have to do. Was it easy at the age, I think I was 26 or going on 27, after already having been removed from college and, in my corporate career? Was it easy to move back in with my mom and dad and live in my childhood bedroom again? Absolutely not. But the dream and the vision of what I wanted to create for others and who I wanted to become and how I wanted to live personally is what kept pushing me through, man. So that's advice I give to people. Like, you have to be creative with your path. You have to be willing to take unconventional steps. If you got to move in with family, if you got to quit your cushy corporate job to go bag groceries or something, or work part-time at a warehouse to take care of your bills while you build on the side, then I encourage people to do that, because you only get one go around in this life. So do what you need to do to get the most out of it.
No, I love that. I think, not only it's a great example of humility, but, as athletes that have been at the top, sometimes you have to downsize for the uprise. And, you talked about, living at home with your parents. A lot of athletes, have to go back home and like they downsize, and it's like, oh, like, I don't want people to judge me. Like, they saw me at this level, now I'm at this level. No, you have to have that long-term vision. So for you, obviously, it's a frugal athlete, so we got to sprinkle in some financial lessons in there. Did you, kind of do it cold turkey, or you built out like an emergency fund, or you analyzed, all right, this is how much my bills are going to cost if I live with my parents, then I'm going to be able to make it work. What was that process like?
Man, up until probably the past couple of years when I really started actually making a living for myself through doing stuff I enjoy, I'll be honest with you, Amobi, I was terrible with money because I didn't understand it. And I wasn't investing in. By the way, downsize for the uprise, that was a bar. I had to write that one down.
Oh, most definitely.
That's an Amobi Okugo original, folks, right there. Downsize for the uprise. I'm stealing that from you, man, but I'll give you credit when I use it. All right.
No worries. I've stolen so much from you too, so we're good.
All right, cool. At least it's mutual,
Yeah.
But to answer your question, man, there was no emergency fund. There was just, because honestly, man, I thought when I had the idea and I had the vision for ThriveAfterSports and helping athletes, and I saw what a gap there was for it in the market, I felt like this was a revolutionary idea, and I was just going to be a millionaire within like a year's time, just being naive. So I'm like, I quit my job. I'm moving back in with my folks, but I'm going to be okay because this is such a huge idea that it's going to take off right away. But I didn't understand anything about business. Not that I have it all figured out today by any means. But with that being said, there was no sort of preparation. So just for people listening, you definitely want to, sometimes you just have to take a leap. Sometimes
that's true. You fail
and
forward.
I'm the type of, exactly. And I'm the type, I don't know if I'm just built like this. I have the type of personality where sometimes I'll paint myself into a corner subconsciously just to put that pressure on myself to dig my way out. Not everybody's built like that.
No, that's so funny you did that, because like growing up, I would like strategically procrastinate like my papers, because like if I don't have like some pressure, then I'm not going to do it. So like literally 4 hours left. All right, perfect. Let me lock in. So it's funny that you say that.
Right.
Pressure makes diamonds.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's it. Me too. And I was the same way in college too, man. Like the night before, up at 3 a.m. finishing the paper. It's not necessarily healthy. I've tried to get better, but I think even if it's subconsciously, that's a part of us that kind of makes us great. Like, not necessarily the procrastination piece, because that's not always healthy, but just like, I'm going to throw myself into this, understanding that this could be catastrophic if it fails, but that's what's going to motivate me to make it work. So
No, exactly. I think a mentor told me sometimes you have to burn the boats. You know, if you always feel like you have a safety net, you're not going to be able to, really thrive in what you're meant to do or what you're called to do. But with that being said, I gotta recommend, if you are thinking about, quitting your job or doing anything like that, you gotta have some sort of, emergency fund just to give you that stability when you do make it on your own. That's just me, a frugal athlete. Make sure you consult with your financial experts and stuff like that. But with
That's
that being
right.
said, let's jump into entrepreneurship. You mentioned how you got some of your first clients. What was it like, no referrals, when you like sought out somebody and they paid you for your services? What was that process like, negotiating? Because I feel like a lot of times as athletes, we have agents or we have, additional help to negotiate on our behalf, but now you're doing it on your own. So what is that process like? Because I'm still struggling with it. So I'm selfishly curious.
Yeah, man. Yeah, great question. I think it was one of those things for me where, so I was a solopreneur, right? Which is different from what I'm actually starting to grow into, like, number one, an entrepreneur, being a part of another organization, being an entrepreneur with that, but also an entrepreneur where I'm building out a team. So back to your question, at the time of me being a solopreneur, being like, okay, I'm the sales team, I'm the marketing team, I'm delivering the services. It was very challenging at first. And I'm the type of person where I wasn't necessarily afraid of asking for the money. But what it was for me is I didn't want to always be charging athletes for my services. So up front, I was doing a lot of coaching for free or for referrals, like you said, just to kind of perfect my craft and make more people aware of what I was doing. Then I would start slowly. Like, it might be like, I'd start out with, okay, I'll do this for 500. And then I'd offer installment plans. And then I bump it up to like 800. And every time I got a client at a certain dollar amount, they gave me the confidence to keep going up until I was, charging thousands and thousands of dollars. Or I would have it set up to where if someone had the funds, I would let them understand that there are people who couldn't afford it. And they would basically make a donation, in a sense, to be able to sponsor someone else. And then I really got smart and started, thank you. And then I really started thinking like, okay, if my goal is for, because I knew when I was coming out of college, if I wanted to work with someone to help me get through those challenges, I didn't have thousands upon thousands of dollars to spend. So me being like, okay, I don't want to charge the athletes, especially athletes coming fresh out of college, but I need to eat and I need to pay bills. I started aligning myself with organizations that could do sponsorships, like Athlete Soul. Shout out to Athlete Soul, founded by, which I know you're familiar with, Miriam Glass. What she's doing at Athlete Soul basically saved, I know it sounds dramatic, but she saved my life because she has funds and grant money to support athletes in transition. And it was just a perfect pair with me connecting with her. She's like, hey, you're the type of coach I'm looking for. Keep doing your thing, use your curriculum, coach the athletes, and I can sponsor these athletes and basically compensate you with grant money.
That's what it's all about.
That's it. And then aligning myself with universities as well. That was another step where I started with my alma mater, Stony Brook, and then I branched out to where they have funds that they can allocate towards this type of thing if it's set up correctly, or if you have a product like a book and stuff like that, which makes it easier to kind of cover the cost of these things. So, but yeah, man, it was very challenging at first, as you know.
And I love that you said started at your own alma mater. I think a lot of athletes, and people in general, they want to go national level. But if you start with the mayor of your city, mayor of your community, mayor of your school, and then build out from there, it's better to have 1,000 super fans than 100,000, fans that, don't really engage with what you're doing from that standpoint. So let's dive into entrepreneurship a little bit more. So what are some things that helped you in the process from like scaling and building out a business? You talked about, using strategic networking, but from the standpoint of like logistics and operations, how did that work for you?
You know what, man, I'm learning that right now, to be honest with you. So this is another place where I had to be humble, because once I kind of got into a rhythm of doing everything myself, which is good but bad at the same time. So I started to delegate certain things on a very small scale. But what I realized I needed was mentorship, because for the longest time, I mean, it's great to have virtual mentors. I'm constantly reading, constantly listening to podcasts, but to have someone you can actually pick up the phone and call, that was a game changer for me. And now with self-publishing 30 days, with me being the vice president over there, I oversee any projects that are related to athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So me being an entrepreneur, meaning I pretty much do my own thing. I'm just responsible for overseeing these projects. Now I'm able to be like, okay, now I actually have a team inside of this company that I'm able to delegate tasks to. I'm able to forecast for the future. And that's been a huge lesson for me. So I'm learning, I'm basically getting a master's right now in
I love
business
it.
by being a, thank you, but like an experiential master's with self-published in 30 days. And I'm learning so much about how I can incorporate this into my business. So I'm sorry, man. What was your original question? I went off on a tangent.
No. I think it all leads into what I was going to say next. You know,
Oh, okay.
you got your books right behind you. Great marketing. So you've learned a little bit of something through your exposure and experiential MBA experience. Athlete
That's
to
right.
entrepreneur. Let's talk about some of the steps that you learned. You know, as an athlete. You know, transitioning into an entrepreneur.
Man, so much, man, so much. It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where it's like, you know, if you can get into a place where you're excited about what you're doing and you approach your lane in business or in life, whatever that is, you approach it like an athlete. That's the whole reason that Athlete to Entrepreneur, the co-author book came about, is because I felt like more athletes need to really see, especially with NIL, more
Mm-hmm.
athletes need to see that you are more than capable of building your own business. Not just being a solopreneur, but having a team around you and creating a movement or a business. And so for me, man, just if you're able to kind of approach every day like it's game day, I always tell athletes this, like, you know, you might have had a game once or twice a week when you were playing your sport, but if you can get into a mindset where it's like, okay, every single day when I wake up for the rest of my life, it's film, practice, game,
Oh, I
film,
love that.
practice, game. You rinse and repeat. And it's the same thing, man. The film is you're studying yourself, you're studying others, you're learning. The practice is you're actually doing it. And the game is you being prepared to show up for those big moments, you know,
Yeah.
like me knowing that we had this podcast on the schedule. This is the game. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Leading up to it, I'm listening to your other episodes and stuff like that. So,
But to touch on that's an important part. We were supposed to do this podcast prior, but you knew because of conflict that you want to be up for the game and pushed it back. So stuff like that, you know, making sure that you're able to perform at a high level and really film, practice, film, practice, game. That's what it's all about. And you got to have that self-awareness, you know, to make that happen.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's it, man. And just a
So,
quick note on the,
oh
oh,
no,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I
You're
was
the
just going to
guest.
say, man, the Athlete to Entrepreneur book, and I'm holding this up right here. I want to encourage anybody to grab this from me.
Yeah,
Of
we're
course, I
definitely
want
gonna
you to
have that
get,
in the show notes.
you got to get this athlete.
Yeah,
This is 20 other athletes, you
I
know,
love
turned
it.
entrepreneurs. And
I
that
see a
was the
couple
goal with
familiar
that, man.
faces in that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a lot of people we both know in there. And so that was the goal with that. And that kind of goes back to your last question about entrepreneurship. Like that's why I wanted to create that project, to bring all these different people together, to give examples of how they did it. So it's not just me in my book. It's like everyone's talking about what they're doing.
Yeah. No, most definitely. And let's segue to that. The process of writing a book, because originally, I think, no, we met before, but when we really started connecting was about the Athlete to Entrepreneur co-authoring book. And I must admit, I was like, what is that? Like, what is that? I'm not writing a book. I don't have time. Like, I'm not trying to pay, whatever. Talk about your process. You have 2 books, and I'm sure you're going to have more in the
Yes,
coming
sir.
future. Talk about that process and then your role as, you know, vice president of self-publishing author.
Yeah, man. I appreciate your transparency on that too, because a lot of people feel the same way. They don't, from the outside looking in, it's like, why would I write a book? Why would I pay to write a book when I can just do it on Amazon? So I could easily, without going off into a 30-minute keynote, I'll just hit a few different points.
And
I
make sure
wanted,
you follow Taj on Clubhouse. He's always explaining a little bit more about the process as well.
Thank you for that plug, brother. I appreciate that. The first thing is, I'll just start with the role as vice president. So I published my book, ThriveAfterSports, the first book. I published that through self-published in 30 days, which I was actually referred to by Joy Walker. Shout out to Joy Walker.
Yeah.
She has a book called The Sweet Spot. I thought her book was well done and she's self-published, but I noticed that she wasn't just selling it on Amazon like everybody else. So I reached out to Joy. Joy connects me with self-published in 30 days. The team did a phenomenal job with my book. I hit it off with the owner of the company, who's a former football player, and he became a mentor to me. You fast forward a couple months after my book comes out, or around the time I was finishing my book, he's like, man, I love what you're doing. There was no word for the transition when I was going through it, but this is real. What do you think about coming on board as vice president of my company and building out a branch where you can help other athletes tell their stories and create projects, because this is needed? So it was a no-brainer for me, man. So that's how I came on board with self-publishing 30 days as VP. When it comes to writing a book, this is the main takeaway I would tell people. A lot of people get overwhelmed with, they have no idea where to start. And even just the writing alone, right, let alone how to publish a book or how to, market it effectively. But most people just open up a laptop, they're staring at a blank screen like, okay, I'm going to write a book. And then it never happens because that's overwhelming. Yeah. So what we do as a company is give guidance about how to actually help you not only write it and give you a strategy and a system where you can I wrote my manuscript in 3 months. Like my entire book was written in a 3-month period because I had guidance and I had structure. Everything is done in-house with the team, from the design to the copyrights to the launch strategy. That's because when you're writing a book, you just want to focus on the creation and you don't have to worry about all these other moving parts and trying to assemble a team just to get the book launched.
That's true.
The other people, this is the last point I'll touch on. People drop the ball when they just go straight to Amazon. And for anybody listening, I'm not knocking you if you publish a book through Amazon. But what you have to understand is that publishing a book through Amazon is not self-publishing. At that point, Amazon is your publisher. And the reason I say that is because Amazon takes 60% of every purchase. That's number one. The second thing is all the data from the people who order your book goes to Amazon. So if you drop a second book or a third book, or if you're a business owner, you're losing all that data because Amazon is your publisher. They're capturing your data and taking 60% off the top. So what we do is we launch the book and you have a place where people can order the book directly from the author. That way you keep all the money in-house and you also are able to track the data. So when I come out with future books, I know who ordered the first one. I know who ordered the second one. And I'm letting those people know, hey, I have a third book out. Hey, I just dropped a podcast. Hey, I'm having this event. But people miss the boat on that when they're caught up on being an Amazon bestseller. And to be honest with you, Amazon bestseller is a hack. Like you can be an Amazon bestseller and you've only sold 13 copies of your book just because you played the algorithm right. So a lot of people get caught up on smoke and mirrors. We're more not caught up, but focused on the data and empowering authors to actually have ownership over the work and take the book and run with it and leverage it for different opportunities. It's not just about book sales. It's about what can you do with the book to create future opportunities, speaking engagements, workshops, events, other business opportunities. And the last thing I'll say, I know I said I was going to keep it brief. My bad, Amobi.
No, you're good. I think it's important because I want to share the process that I came about when it came to this process. So keep going.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that. The last thing I'll share about books is that you want to make sure that, I think I already said this, but you want to make sure you have the right guidance. Otherwise, your book will come out and people won't take you seriously. Yes, you can check the book to say you're an author, but if it looks trash, if it's not professionally edited, you're going to find yourself in trouble because you basically published the book for no reason and people are looking at you like how you do anything is how you do everything. So if your book is trash, you're not taken seriously, and you would have been, sometimes we tell people you would be better off just not publishing the book if you're not going to do it the right way. Then that's a fact. So
you're exactly right. Like, especially as it comes to brand and reputation, if you coming out with the self-publishing book and there's spelling errors and grammar mistakes and the spacing is 3 triple spaced, people are going to be like, all right, I could have made this book. There's a couple of instances, not an athlete, but an influencer that came out with the book and everyone was like, so it can actually end up hurting your brand. But on the flip side, I definitely value the fact that you helped me with this process and the fact that I think every athlete should have a book. Every athlete has their own unique story. Every athlete has a community that's willing to connect with them. And like you said, it's a pillar. It's a springboard for so many different things that you may potentially want to do. A workshop, speaking engagements, having a curriculum, all these different things, a podcast. And I just want to ask you, just real quick, why should every athlete, consider, writing a book?
Oh man, so it's twofold. There's the selfless aspect of it, which means when your book comes out, it's going to help people. And a lot of people think, oh, who am I to write a book? Like, you have to understand, everybody has something unique to bring to the table. I always use the example of personal trainers. There's personal trainers in every city, everywhere you go, and they all have clients because everyone brings something unique to the table. The same rule applies to the book. Even if you don't think you have anything to say, you have knowledge that can help people, and you're only going to be able to reach a certain amount of people through that book. So that's the first part, the selfless part. Selfishly, and I don't mean selfish in a bad way, if it's done correctly and rolled out correctly, it's going to help enhance your brand. It's going to open up opportunities. Like people, you got to understand, if your book is done the right way, it's almost like having a PhD. People just put more respect on your name when you add author to your resume or to your, to your profile. The fact that you have taken the time to publish a book, people will look at you and be like, wow, this person is serious about what they're doing if they took the time to write and publish a book about this topic. Yeah. It's so serious that we have PhDs, people who have doctorates in their fields will still write a book. They have a PhD, but they want to become authors as well, because even a PhD knows that's adding an extra layer of expertise to whatever your field is.
No, I love it. And like for me, the legacy standpoint too, like a book lasts forever. A lot of times, as people are naturally oral history, we share history orally, but you're able to write something down that's going to last and stand the test of time to not only help, your immediate future or your immediate relationships around across the board, whether it's athletics or whatever subject that you write about, but long after you're done, someone might change their life just simply by reading a book. So, you sold me for sure, because I'm in the process of, doing a co-authoring book. I think it's going to be the first of many, but we try to get the first one out the way first. And so be on the lookout by that. Probably sometime mid 2022, Taj is going to press me to make it sooner, but we'll see how that goes. But that's about it. Before I let you go, if you're listening, we're going to have all Taj's information in the show notes, both his books, Athlete to Entrepreneur, Thrive After Sports, as well as his contacts if you're interested in learning more about what he does and some of the services that he could provide to you. But lastly, any takeaway that you want, anyone listening to this to have.
Yeah, man. I would just say, this is something I've been trying to share with people a lot lately. I would just say, don't get so caught up on how things are going to pan out for you. Just focus on planting seeds. And I know that sounds like, what does that mean? I think about 2017, when I told you when I really started doing this, there are seeds, meaning like reaching out to people, connecting with people, or just staying consistent with certain things. There are seeds that I planted in 2017 that have literally just started to sprout this year. And so if you think about life from that perspective, I know you know it too. I know you see it in your life and your business as well. That's what I would leave people with, is don't get so caught up in, oh, how's this going to work out? Or how am I going to make this work? Your job every day, all of us, is just to wake up and plant as many seeds as possible, understanding that some will never sprout and some are going to sprout when you least expect them. So just plant seeds.
Yeah. And then lastly, now that you're a little bit more experienced in the business and finance space, any quote or any takeaway from a money management perspective that you'd leave them with?
Man, from a money, well, get with expert. I think you said it earlier. That's the best thing that I could tell you is have a plan and don't try to do it all yourself. Of course, you want to be educated yourself and educating yourself on finance and how money works. Not only the creation of it, but managing money. But get with people who know what they're doing. I think I dropped the ball on that major in the past. And I understand that once I started getting with the right people and I could trust them to give me solid advice with my money, that's been a huge game changer for me. So just seek out advice. If you're listening to this or watching this right now, you're in the right place. There's a huge catalog Amobi has of info and people. So, just keep listening to these episodes. I would say that.
I respect. And then real quick, plug some of the things that you're doing and how they can connect with you. I know we said we're going to mention it in the show notes, but you do have a podcast, you do have books, you do have services, you do self-publishing, you do it all. So for people that want to listen.
Yes, sir. I always point people to TajDashaun.com. That's all my social media handles are on there. I'm Taj Dashaun on every social media platform. Thank you for plugging Clubhouse, because I always forget to talk with me on Clubhouse. I host rooms all throughout the week. Like I said, Taj Dashaun on LinkedIn, Taj Dashaun on Instagram. The book is on there as well. All the books are on my website. Just click the books tab. The podcast, Thrive After Sports, is available on all podcast platforms. But like I said, even if you go to TajDashaun.com, you click the podcast tab, it'll take you to that. The other thing I want to share is, if you're someone who's looking to get a book done or just has questions about a book, make sure you reach out to me. I'm accessible. Just reach out wherever you see fit. I can send you advice, send you some stuff that's going to help you at least get started, even if you're not ready to write or publish at this time. And then if you're an athlete, current or former athlete, the parent of an athlete, a coach, and you know someone who needs help mapping out the next steps, make sure you reach out. There's a place you can schedule on my website. You don't have to pay. Like I said, I've set it up to where I can coach athletes for free and I can get compensated. So we have scholarships available if you're an athlete in need of transition support. Don't hesitate to reach out.
No, I love that. And Taj will get back to you within 48 hours, usually sooner. This guy's always available and accessible. I don't say that in a bad way. You know, he's always here to serve, always here to create impact, and you know why I respect him so much. So thank you so much, Taj. It was a pleasure. We got it done. Hopefully, you know, the listeners, you know, found value in our conversation. So appreciate you for real, for real.
You're the man, bro. I appreciate what you do. Like I told you time and time again, I'm a fan of a frugal athlete, of course, but first and foremost, I'm a fan of Amobi Okugo.
Oh,
So
I love
much
that.
love to you, bro.
No, most definitely. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.